Hey, I think it's time we pay an update to the exotic. We can look at it and ask questions and answer questions and do all that stuff. Like, how do you get the tires out, dude? How do you get the tires out of there? Is there enough structure back here? Is it gonna be strong enough? How's the fuel cell gonna go in there? How's the fuel cell gonna stay in there? How's it gonna be held down? What are you gonna do? What'd you do? What'd you build? So we're gonna do all that stuff. I have just a quick cut list. I don't need a notepad. This is just stuff, again, to get my brain focused on what we got here. I drink a lot of cold brew right now, and I'm trying to weed through it by eating some Chex Mix and drinking water, okay? I feel slightly clustered now, so I'm gonna try to digest this thing in a way of maybe structure and planning, and then go into detail. Now, if I get that, good. If I don't get that, we're gonna cover it either way. It just might be a little messy. Before, last time we covered it, we had like the hyperstructure here. We had this Corsair tail, pretty much just making a shelf, right? Like something where if you stood here, like you feel like you'd get something going here where the strength would be missing, right? It's just like a shelf. Like this horizontal surface doesn't have any triangulation or tie-in that's gonna add structure, especially when you add 2 spares and 2 fuel cells on this thing. So, you know, classic triangulation would be to draw your 2 points or your 3 points and then add and tie in. And that's what we have here now. Like this whole thing is just a radius rolled tube mecca of things going on. 1 3/4 inch, varying wall thicknesses pertaining to the areas, and then progressive tube rolling. So what I mean by that is a lot of times if you're rolling stuff, you can almost, like if you're rolling tube for a job, you can kind of just roll one big, you know, stick, like a 20 or 24 or a 10 or whatever, and then just cut from that. But with this, there's different planes. So each time, you know, you take that, if that's a circle, when you start to kick it, it stretches into an ellipse. And so that's what's going on. Like this, there's a lot of work into that. This top surface, that's one roll. This is a progressive roll, so it's less roll here, and then it tightens back into this intersection. And then this guy is the same thing, but it does the opposite. So it's less, and then it progresses into that intersection to grab the tires and have an equal gap, or pretty consistent, almost a finger in here. The question again, now, people are programmed for race truck. This is not a race truck. This is a Prerunner. It is not something where you're like, get out, get the tires out, go, 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 go. No. If this is a flat tire situation, all right, cool, got a flat, let's pull over, get something to drink, blah, blah. You might put on some gloves, you know, do that kind of deal, get prepped. All right, let's put a mat down. I don't know, but it's not something where it's like, go, go, go. So when we get into this is gonna be an amazing feature as far as tire delivery, ingress, egress, meaning getting in, getting out. But right now, just covering the structure. This kind of alleviates the square kind of weakness thing going on here. And it also sets up a partition for the fuel cells and the spares. So there's a divider, and there's kind of order in the court there. We got some style points in, like this, all these miters you see are your classic, like proper structural miter with a partition in them, meaning there's like a wall in there, and one of these tubes gets welded with that cap first, then it's got a you know, like a vent hole in it, and then the other one's on there, and then it's welded. So this is all just root pass right now, and then we'll get the final in. But I mean, you definitely get the point of it. And then, you know, like I said, I was leading into style points like this miter we took the truck outside. I had it stationed right here at the bay. Bring it outside so I can get further away because we have a small space here. So with something that's super crucial, being able to step away from it is huge. You can build stuff, and I've said it before, but I'm a broken record, so whatever. You can build stuff in a shop, and you can be 5 feet away, and you will get a good understanding. But then all of a sudden, you go out and you're, you know, 50 yards away or whatever, and you're like, oh man, maybe we should have looked at that in a little different perspective. So we set all this, you know, this angle and all the approach. This is all designed for fuel cell. Same with this kick in the back. Everything is forward thought as far as what's going to go in next and what's going to happen next. I'm going to take the spares out. I think what we'll do, we'll jump into the delivery of these things and how these come out. Also, this was rickety, right? It's because there's 1/2-inch bolts and 5/8 misalignments down there for the shocks. So it's a little mock-uppy. Obviously we like level the truck, X and Y to work on it, but this is just to kind of roll it around, and rickety, you know? What's going on right now, so we want to get stuff done to take the next steps forward on this. Next steps forward, not meaning like my work so much, but like getting the thing scanned, getting the fuel cells designed, having the, you know, rear middle cross member and the tire cradle plate here designed, machined, doing a lot of stuff that can be done remotely. We're gonna send the truck out to get some of this stuff done. It can go away, it can get this stuff done, and then come back. Now, I do have things that need to be done beforehand to get all the information in for that stuff to happen, and that's what we're working towards right now. One of those things is this rear tire like cradle plate. So I started sketching it, just really rudimentary digital design style. And I think what we're gonna wanna do is we'll have this structure, like it's strong laterally, but on the rear here, it needs some kind of cross. I mean, obviously if you could do it proper, you'd wanna at least get an X going from point to point. But what we'll do is we'll get something that's a little lower, that's probably right at the height of that tread there, and we'll have it dip down, and it'll be a nice machine piece with an X in it, like exact same styling and design language as the upper arms. The machine parts that we put in here, they're all going to be that same style as the upper arms that people notice. I put a lot of time and energy into getting a good design out of those things. And that kind of, I guess people call it a knife edge now, but there's a lot of forethought in that stuff. And to be able to carry it into 1, 2, 3 more pieces on the truck that are integrated into it, it's going to be awesome. So this will be one integrated, like license plate provisions, and then some kind of a light too, and that'll all be bolt on. Again, the question goes, well, how do you get the tires out? Like this top one's easy, and then this bottom one, what we'll have is an assist. So there's a big structure under here. Remember what this is, and then I'll take everything off and I'll kind of explain things to you guys. But I think before we do that, I want to show you that top cross member, because when I come back to update, we're probably going to have more of this at least like digitally done and laid out, and I want you to be able to kind of imagineer right now what's going on, so then I can present to you the real thing, or at least the more conceptualized part. Sounds dirty over there, whatever he's doing. This sounds like like a piece of metal is not happy. It's just, don't do that, no. you know, oh, leave me alone. Wonder if there's lubrication being used. Are you getting it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I don't know how that looks from over here. There's a lot going on. What I want to get out, it's almost gonna take tape and just kind of draw across. Yeah, we're gonna do that. All right, just to help the eyes. End to burn, $10 of tape. Here we go, boom, done. Just do this one just for reference. So, rear cross member, or whatever, middle cross member, because there's gonna be one in the back, but we'll just call that a cradle plate. We'll call this a rear cross member because there's a front cross member. It'll all tie in. Back to the sketches. Remember, we started, no matter what with this back half, we started with the sketches. We started with design, layout, and concept, and now we've executed every step of that way. Just like we talked about, there hasn't been much change except for addition, or just improvising or revising in a positive way, like a helpful way with stuff like all this stuff for all the fuel lines, just adding proper shape as we're going based off of the sketches, but not exact to the sketches. And that's what they were for, visual communication. So that's what we have here. This is going to be the rear cross member. So you have to think now, you have to think that there's a big ass radiator that's going to go in here. It's built to the truck. It's leaned over. And what this cross member is going to do, it'll obviously be like a 70-75 billet aluminum piece. It's going to cradle your tire. So it's not going to be straight across like this, but it'll go in and cradle here. It's going to be located with 2 3/4 12 points, big old. I mean, I didn't need to use 3/4, but I think visually, having like a really robust 3/4 12 point aircraft certified bolt, 1 2 3 4 in here, is going to show like this is part of the truck, like this, because the whole chassis in here is not designed to be structurally sound unless that cross member is in here. That is part of the key to the chassis. So that'll complete this area. But again, it'll have the radius here, have all the design cues of the upper arms, just like all this stuff, like the sculpted structural parts, the aero tubing, all of this ties together. And when this piece is in here, it'll also saddle the radiator. So it'll be like it'll go in from the top, and then boom, you put your bolts in. The radiator's already saddled and holstered in here. It's a backing for the tire, so the tire's not moving around. And then these bolts will be in here. This one bolt on the rear will have a pocket, and that will either be a hold down here, or we have this mechanism that I want to talk about. So imagine that all, ooh, shiny, shiny, cool, ooh, look at that, ooh, CNC. And then with the tires, there's going to be a mechanism, and I don't know like where we're at with the mechanism. I have ideas in my head. Either like, I like electric actuators, linear actuators, but the thing is they're so slow. So anytime you want to show something, if it's 1-to-1 with like the mechanism and it's not like engineered where it has a faster ratio, it's so slow. It's just, it's almost like a boat, like a cover for the engines. Like you're like, sick boat, and then they're like, and you hear more buzzing than you see things moving. So I'd like to have something engineered here where either it's on air, because this will have onboard air, so maybe it's tapped into that, and it's a pressurized cantilever situation that has a hold down. So the bottom will be hub centric, and this top one might be hub centric this way. Hub centric meaning, you know, if the hub is this big, then the wheel goes right around it, and it's centered on there, and there's no slop. So that part can be just like that. Maybe it's tapered so it can come out easier, and it's not just a square hit, like a square cylinder. And what's going to go on is this will be integrated in the cross member. We'll have a pivot in here, some kind of pivot, and something that holds this down. So even if you have a flat, it's going to meet down on the bottom with the other thing we're going to talk about for the mechanism. So it's going to be two different things. It's going to be a hold down that holds this thing locked, and then it's also going to be a lift from the bottom, and we'll get into that as soon as I take this off. But I wanted to get you guys up to speed. This is just like we talked about. The winch lives in there. That winch is enough to pull 2 trucks out at once. It's a 10,500 pound super winch with all the bells and whistles, Bluetooth, all the stuff. So probably run that thing on Motec and run some kind of key fob on this whole thing that gets the party started. So what I'm gonna do right now, I'm gonna take this stuff out, You can kind of get a good view on this thing. And then, you know what? Well, let's walk. I'm gonna put the X in the back where the tire cradle will be, just to get a visual like this. Hit it. All right, so you guys can kind of tell what's going on here. Like I said, I wanted to keep this below sea level. It's nice because that cross structure already hits exactly where we need it to. That's awesome. It's almost nice too because it almost hits right in that miter section. What this will look like, it will be the similar styling as the front. Big, nice beveled like tapers in the machine work that are specific to this design. So not just consistent stuff, but it'll have tension exactly where it needs to be. I'm thinking 2 hardware locations on the top, 3 hardware locations on the bottom here. And you know, I think what we'll have is we'll have a thicker, maybe a 1/2 inch plate that's back here, either a machine plate, something that indexes. That means it kind of fits in there and it's tapped. And we just screw our hardware right. It's just a single shear. It'd be perfect for this. It also adds as a gusset down here. And then that gives that nice finish piece. So that's that. Now I can take the tires out. That's called hammer forming. It'll fit. We'll just a couple more times and we'll get it, you know? What we have here, I took the top one out and the bottom one, this is your classic thing. Oh my gosh, how does this come out? What do? You know, I guess for some people it's hard to lift these things. And so what we do to make this easier on everybody is we have, just like the top is a mechanized hold down, this is a mechanized lift. There's a structure right dead center in here is that X, and that X adds as a hub centric lift gate. So this thing just goes up. It only needs to go up 8 to 10 inches and that thing comes right on out. It's gonna be the same as the top, so it's gonna be this kind of a thing, if you will, to not only hold the tires down, but also to lift the tire. Now the options there, I thought about just doing a worm drive, but I think there's simpler things, and you might even be able to double down. Like, I think if we put either a Bunderson jack in there or something, even like an airbag, some kind of mechanism that can just, and do it quick. Again, no linear actuator, 1-to-1 motion ratio. No. So I think air mechanized stuff here would be the ticket. Just wanted to let you guys kind of get you filled in there, and then I'm gonna also take this one out and we'll look at the whole structure in general. Tires are out. Obviously this is all our big structure in here. Winch provision, kind of pedestal there. There will be, if you just think about what we went through, cooler, trans cooler up there in the window. And then, you know, the void now is the fuel cell. So one per side, they'll be linked together, top and bottom, and then they'll each have their own fill. Doesn't need to have a filler, it'll be right here, nice and just plumb and square each side. This pocket, this kind of spatial opening here, will be great for running the lines. Try to do some solid, nice, tidy, solid lines where we can. And you know, the next thing happens is, well, how does the fuel cell stay here? Are you gonna put tanks back here? Where does it go? How does it stay? What happens? This and that. So you can see the structure now of where we're at with the spares and kind of tying in all the stuff at the sway bar area and towards the back. So this isn't just like a lip sitting by itself. This is tied in, and then boom, we tie these together and then we're in a good spot. And then we go, well, is this just gonna be strong enough to hold a fuel cell sitting here? It probably is, but we're still gonna build on top of this and have a really nice win with the tie down system here. Tie down system is where we need to go into a little more detail, because some fuel, like, you know, your bare bones fuel cell would be like a strap. I'm gonna put fuel cell straps and like, oh, dimple dies, and you know, like a 1/8 inch by 2 inch thing or something. And when I say hold down here, this is gonna be an actual sculpted structural chromoly treatment, a wishbone, if you will. Bolt in 2 locations up top, wishbone back into a single around the corner, and then bink down into the structure here, tying all this in. So then you get that, and it's holstered in there. I don't know if it's better to explain things. We got to look at that. If it's better to explain stuff with the tires back in, just to kind of see the spatial awareness and isolate it more. If we put the tires in there, we'll probably be able to get more of an isolation. So let's do that. So I wanted to go over and just get our smaller camera going to kind of show you some of this stuff, just to really get an idea of shapes. Again, bear with me on the finish welding right now. There's just root passes. Some of it's like polished out, you know, like the miters and stuff here, or this intersection. It looks like old school. This is like how they used to weld in early like desert racing days. That was your single pass TIG, and that stuff held up like nobody's business. So it's nice to have that extra safety of a root pass on top, or a cover pass on top of the root pass. But that works too. But it's, you know, usually you can still get a really good root pass, and it'll kind of tell the story of how good your fitment was with your tube structure, based on how the root pass is, because you're gonna have a pretty spooky root pass if the fitment wasn't good on your plate or your tube. Things to look at here though. You know, obviously, like, there's some crazy sight marks with this radius, like how this works. And it's just, this really completed the back of the truck. And then the other thing is, like, you know, there's still some structural integrity stuff I want to get after here. Like, if you think about these structures, this is a big box plate structure that's kind of tied off this area, and then there's just one upright going here, and we landed the rolled area into that upright. But you know, there's still, like, it's still weird because it's kind of a shear point. So these gussets here tie in really nice with what we already have going here. You know, this is all 3/4 tube, 90 chromoly plate, and then 2 inch 120 wall tube, all blended, built on tangent. So that kind of shape that you see there, that's our same thing we did here. So this is a 3/4 tube with 90 plate, and it's rolled. So the gusset is actually consistent with the roll of the chassis. And then obviously it's kind of built on here and welded on here, and then we pop it off and blend it all. And you know, and then stab it back on, root pass it. So those little guys are important. I think what we want to do is have another something in here to tie this in, because we've kind of done this. Now I almost want to go over here just to make that structure really dependent on each side, where it can really do what it needs to do. There's another hidden gusset in here. So here's another one. Same thing, 3/4 tube, going root passing. You know, and this one ties this all together. So it grabs the Corsair tail, and then it rips down into that support tube there. So everything 1, 2, 3 are all working in unison there to kind of spread the load. So things to look at, just little details. Sometimes I like to come in with a smaller camera and take care of this stuff. Also, we might be a couple episodes of us just doing this together instead of Joey filming, because Joey's having another baby. So I'm gonna ride this thing out solo and just get him all of my content, and he's gonna go hardcore editing. Whoa. That's why he has babies, see? Got him. I brought a couple things. This is just gonna help us get through just kind of explaining like the surfacing on this stuff. Surfacing meaning surfaces, like this is surfacing, right? However, this is on the structure, and that's what these fuel cells are gonna be. So from day one, we talked about carbon fuel cells. We talked about running 2 separate ones per, one per side. That's what we have. So everything like stuff that's really important for us. We did have an idea about the exhaust going through here. Just a weird thing with like an exhaust running through a channeled fuel cell. I don't know if that's a good idea. But this whole thing is still built exactly for what we're doing. And same with like all these surfaces, like that fuel cell is gonna register into this whole area. So what you'd think is this is gonna be your sidewall right here. And it's gonna have that really gentle radius here. And that's gonna run through. So that's gonna be that, and then this is gonna be the approach. So you know that the approach is gonna be completely on here. So everything, like all these perimeters, this perimeter, this perimeter, this perimeter, and these guys are all gonna dictate, our fuel cell shape. Now, the next thing is, well, how is it gonna be held down? And that's why I say like registers. This big old hyperstructure guy, this is on an angle in here. So what we'll do is again, this is scanned. We go through here, we draw what we want one-to-one digitally. My sketches will be tight enough where we can get the absolute communication done visually, where this can be translated into a real-time digital SolidWorks file for a fuel cell per side. And with that, the fuel cell can index in, and it can be a really smooth operation to kind of dive into this stuff. Obviously have a channel or a keyway here, dive in here, and then radius, and follow through here. And then what we'll do is it'll be locked in on the bottom corner here. It'll be locked in all through the front. And the only thing you're gonna wanna kind of worry about is this corner, because that's kind of how you'd get the thing out. It needs to definitely have some kind of a structure tying in. It's not gonna be that big of a tank when you think about it. It's kind of a nice, proper, exotic looking thing here. So with that, I am going to build a small bulkhead here. When I say bulkhead, obviously like bulkhead, you could talk about like center mount bulkhead, sick, but bulkhead just meaning somewhere that's a structure, almost a substructure for something to go, or parts to bolt to and be mounted to. So I will have a tie-in here, and that tie-in is gonna have something where this strap that comes across, again, we're gonna touch on strap because that's not what I don't mean a sheet metal strap or whatever. This will obviously be on an angle, and it'll kind of roll over and it'll spread its load in a wishbone form. So tie in where it makes sense here, spread here. These will come together, and then they'll run down. And then we'll have like bink bink in there. We'll have mounting locations up here too. So what that's gonna do is that's not just gonna tie that corner in, but it's gonna be like a hold down, and it's also being constructed out of like a structural sculpted kind of shape like this, which will be smaller scale. So this is obviously like 2 inch and 3/4, but what we'll do here is we'll run like maybe 1 inch and half or something. So it'll just be like a downsized thing of this, but it'll still be like a really nice organic shape that pulls out of these two, comes over, and then they follow each other right into there. I guess I've had this on there for a while. Don't be looking at my tape, man. So that's something just to think about. I know it's still like a weird thing to see or visualize, but that's kind of the double win, because then we're staying true to the whole structure and all the shapes here. We are having a hold down for the fuel tank, and then we're also getting some structural integrity, tying 3 points back into these corners. I mean, all this, if you remember when we started building this and you go back on the episodes, like again, if you're jumping into this one, I really suggest watching the build up to this, because then it all, even when I look back, I'm like, oh wow, we stuck to it. Like this is actually the exact plan and everything is working perfect. So look back, because this whole structure under here, this is all 1/8 inch chromoly, 3/4 chromoly tube in here, and then it's got lacing, keywayed, which means like it's tied, sandwiched, and welded, like indexed in here with internal gussets. So everything like, and you know, same thing, I knew this would be like the most outside area that would need stuff. So the gussets get tight towards this area where there's strength, and it ties all the way through here, like just a gnarly bridge. So again, like if you just did some kind of basic hold down, it would probably be fine, but want to just double down on our strength and rigidity. This whole thing is kind of built like that. So obviously, the thing you can like bank on with this truck is that we're not like reinventing the wheel with the suspension. It is the exact like wheelbase and geometry and travel numbers and everything that you'd want for like being a trophy truck style pre-runner. It's just a design exercise and a language carried throughout that is different from your typical race car derivative of build. So it's the ability to have a client that shares the same kind of dream as far as building something like this, and then the ability to be able to execute it and just having the right things in place to do so. I want to talk about a couple other items inside the cab, and then we are done for today. More stuff to think about, like want to be able to start sketching. We just need to make like more of a structured plan to get stuff done here and get stuff done on the truck. No, I guess not so much here, just get stuff done on the truck. So with that, getting enough information in here to figure out the dash or the instrument panel, the door panels, upper console, all that kind of stuff. Makes us need to complete a couple things here. One of the things I'd like to complete is getting the floorboards done. I don't want to just do a flat, typical floorboard. I'm going to put some shape into them. I'm going to build them pertaining to the exhaust that's under there, or the headers, and get some really good kind of counter, that's not a good term. I'm just going to put some shape in there. It doesn't need to be like a straight floor. It can kind of be built like, I remember being in a Honda S2000. You know, that's a weird reference, and I know that they have like a unibody floor it's sheet metal, and that's their structure, but it's like a Y. Well, it's like a wishbone, right? But you can see when you sit in these things in the S2000, it has like this crazy like structure that's just part of the floor. It's not like a small detail. It's like a big shape dimension, and I think that like we don't need to just waste that space. If there's a way to occupy that space, maybe we sheet metal like part of it. And then maybe there's a way to have like a box that goes in, maybe a carbon box or something that has like tools and stuff that can like index into there. So there's like, this is the opportunity here to think about options like that would make sense, that are kind of cool, to not have like floating tools, you know, but something, this whole dynamic, like Thomas, I fit Thomas for this thing. This thing kind of still has its movement. It's nice to have a slider that slides like that without having weld tension in it from the chassis. You know, the whole control here is just like a high performance car. You're not sitting, I'm in a farm truck. You know, you're sitting in like a high performance, comfortable vehicle, almost a flat foot situation, but not. You have a little bit of bend here. So I'm gonna start sketching stuff that's pertaining to this. There's some footwell area like down here you don't need, right? You have your foot controls up here, so like your heel rest and everything, it should be pertaining to kind of where your controls are, and the void there, make sense of that void. This is all kind of, I'm just spitballing stuff with you guys while I'm going through it and kind of explaining my thought process here. With that, we'll do both sides, and then the steering column, I'd like to just at least reference the general for the steering column, because that's really going to set the bar. Like, this looks like a ton of space right now, but man, once you start to put displays in here, like we have some wild ideas as far as the shapes here. I think for Thomas, he's been waiting a long time to have me do a dash in this thing. I I think one of the main things he wanted done, even when we got this truck as like a roller before how it was, before we kind of went so far back and then built it so far up, is like this was one of the main things, like this big console up here, the door panels, and this dash were like a really big ticket item where we were gonna just be able to go hardcore, you know? So those are just things to think about for next time. Hope you guys enjoyed the update here. We will be going to Off-Road Expo. We will be bringing this. We have our booth. We'll bring Vivian, the Tundra F100 Chevy. I don't know. The rusty cab truck. We'll be bringing the exotic and the rusty cab truck to our own booth. You can look us up. What's the number?
4219.
4219 is our booth. We will be in the same hall, air conditioning inside as PCI. Come check this out. Come say hi to me. We will have aprons on deck. We're not going to have a lot of them, so if you want one, they'll be exclusively available at Off-Road Expo. I know we'll do another batch because I know there's a lot of people that hit me up for aprons through YouTube, or hit me on my Instagram for aprons, seeing them on YouTube. So we'll get them going, but it's kind of just a quick change order right now to do them. So we'll do what we have. We will also have shirts and some stickers. Hope you have a good Monday. Thank you.